Dear guest, let me present and give the floor to the moderator, Mr. Sosnovsky. Please, Vyacheslav, the floor is yours. Good
День.
morning, dear participants. Good morning. Thank you very much. I received. My name is Vyacheslav Sosnovsky. I'm the Director of Legal and Tax Department KPMG in Kazakhstan, and I'm representing as a moderator of the first panel session of our conference. And I would like to start with the following, with a small story how I met with the E letter. First E letter in 2001. I was suspended in Almaty at the airport by border securities because I didn't have an ordinary ticket for a plane from one airport to another, and only the representative of the air company helped to explain the border security that actually I had an e-ticket, electronic ticket. And after that, we had e-book, e-trade, e-mobile, and all those words are quite familiar to us today. And the topic of our today's first session is with the e-letter, e-commerce, or electronic trade. And this year, we got acquainted with it this year, and actually we urged to get acquainted with it. Probably some people liked it, and not all the people will return to the ordinary format of purchasing. And today, at the session of electronic commerce, we have four speakers for presentations. Konstantin Aushin, the Director of Consulting EC at PNG in Kazakhstan, Central Asia, the experience of buyers in new reality. Жанеркета Супова Ахметова, the Director of Legal Department of General Company Task Force. Жанерке will present the legal regulation of electronic trade in Republic of Kazakhstan. Tax aspects in the Republic of Kazakhstan will be presented by Dana Gulibraeva, Chief Manager of Legal Department Ernst & Young to Kazakhstan. And in the conclusion, the court and alternative ways of defense in electronic commerce that will be presented by Ksenia Prokhorova, the managing partner of Ukrainian office SBH offices. And before I give the floor to our speakers, I would like to remind our participants that we have a special button, Q&A, questions and answers, where you can ask your questions during the panel session. Please do not forget to write down the name of the speaker who you ask, and please also indicate your own name in order we could respond to this question properly. And we are planning to respond to all the questions after our presentation. And I would like to remind our speakers that we have only 15 minutes for each presentation. Please keep this schedule. So the experience of buyer in new reality. Konstantin, please, the floor is yours. Yes, thank you very much. Konstantin Aushov, the Director of the Practice and Technological Consulting, KPMG, Kazakhstan and Central Asia. In our group, we're dealing with very deep technical, technological issues on information and digital technology, cyber security, and we can see that in many projects, probably in all the projects, independently from the industry or company or segment, they can work B2B, B2C in the framework of business strategy, IT strategy, and digitalization. All have the questions to the transition to e-commerce, probably to developing different platforms, IP services integrations with partners and so on, and making marketplaces, of course. And having chose the topic, I was thinking about technical and architectural topic, but we've discussed with our colleagues and we've decided that probably it would be better to speak about general things and global research on the market of electronic commerce and the habits of buyers uh, put in front during COVID time. And based on this research, I would like, first of all, at the beginning of the conference to present the results. And let's start it. Well, first, what I wanted to say is not the news that many researches and studies about this topic say that all these things connected with the pandemic and quarantine accelerated the tendencies that actually had been existing in the market. I mean, digitalization, the transition to online format. And the first trend that you can see in the framework of electronic commerce and trade, that the whole retail business is evolving and looking towards different platforms, services for partners, for buyers, and implementing and selling own services and goods. So the second moment is that in principle, and I will speak about it in details, that many buyers and consumers change the mechanism of the choice where to buy, because it's not only the goods itself, but also how the brand positions itself from long-term perspectives and views to the life of the community in total, in general, and to some issues of social responsibility. And before this trend was seen mostly in some developed countries, now in the whole world, in all the countries, including developing countries, the importance of a global objective for the brand is very important. That is announced by everyone. The third is, of course, thinking the cost of doing business and effectiveness of everything and everyone. And the last important moment is the issue of trust. Of course, it's connected with the second trend. Probably it correlates with it when the buyers say, and they use this word, that I trust a specific brand. So it doesn't matter, for example, how much it costs. And probably we do not look at the statistics, whether it's cheap or expensive, but can we trust this trend? It's the most important question. If we look at some key purchase drivers that regulate and formulate our consumption, what can we know here? There were some open questions to the buyers in different questions that are connected with different ranges, and what are the top questions? What's important for us when we choose a specific shops or suppliers or specific goods and services? And it's very interesting what we need to focus our attention on, that personalization that we are talking about the last 10 years. So that is important, that we need to analyze the data. Yes, it's in top, but actually it's not in top three. The issue of personalization of suggestions of different goods and services in retail sales and in e-commerce. But the issue of trust in the brand, the issue of security, the issue of range of products and services are becoming very important. Customer experience and ease of buying. And of course, on the first place, of course, there is an issue of value for money, what we receive in exchange for our money. It's not so simple because half of the responses from all the countries say that they are suffered from some limitations financially because of the pandemic. That is why our buyers are becoming more price sensitive. And another trend is mostly not only in Kazakhstan, but also everywhere. It's clear that cash is reducing. Fewer and fewer people want to pay in cash. They use more cards, but also digital Process also are becoming very popular. Digital wallets are becoming very popular in many countries. Many retailers and many buyers, they want to pay not with a cash or cards, but with digital wallets. And this trend, the transition towards mobile websites online is visible everywhere. It's an issue of interaction with the buyers, even is connected with the return of goods. Fewer and fewer. For example, if we take the segment from 18 to 24, there are fewer people who go physically to, for example, some retail shops. They want to use applications or websites, and it's developing among youth population 2024. And some people also want to solve different problems via WhatsApp. Mobile phones, emails are becoming very popular channels. Why go online, and why do buyers think that this is the basis for the future? It's an issue of convenience. So we have asked this question, and many people say that the prices online are cheaper. This is one of the drivers. But the second question, in principle, the issue of location and the destination is another part. And of course, the same factors impact on the choice of the buyer to go to the physical shop. It's an issue of value for money, and the price is very important, and the buyer will look for a specific price. Retailers to focus on, and what our buyers think about what can impact on their choice to go to an ordinary shop or probably to order from big network markets. And first of all, people are learning to be socially distant, and that is why probably they are now feel more comfortable in big spaces. That is why social distancing is one of the popular answers when we need to focus on to deliver good services and goods. The second is free delivery. It's a very good thing that is very interesting for all of the people, and other factors also very important. For example, flexibility, discounts, and so on. And also, in our slides and questions, we wanted to differentiate and to analyze whether there is a difference in habits of buyers from the point of view whether we buy specific things or probably products. And we can see these differences. For example, let's say grocery stores, product markets, of course, there is a fewer online transition, but actually it exists. And if we speak about big shops, we can see the drop and decrease in grocery and non-grocery things. And one more visual trend, and we can trace it in Kazakhstan, that the local suppliers are in the pockets of our buyers. So when we have a choice, of course, the quality and the value are very important, but the notion that is produced in Kazakhstan or locally, it impacts on the definition and also on the decision of a buyer to procure a specific good or service. But the global brands are losing their attention, but the attention to the local suppliers is increasing. And it's very important that it's not the issue of the price. Very often, our buyers are ready to pay more if they know that it's a local brand, and probably it's a loyalty during the quarantine time. It's an inevitable um, phenomena, and they are ready to pay more. Of course, it impacts on the banks, and the banks are becoming the drivers of first beneficiaries from online transition. And we also ask different questions. I haven't shown the statistics, but based on this study, you can see that the market in total is focused on new banks. When new banks are emerging, for example, digital banks, at the very beginning, different products were developed and the focus was on these products. But another moment that if we take the first point, of course, in the whole world, the definition of digital security and cybersecurity are taking the first role. And that is why our buyers pay their attention how the banks provide the security for buyers, whether there were different incidents or not, whether they were solved or not. And in total, if we take other issues, when we choose a bank or an application, how we work with the bank are also very important. For example, the cross-platforms issue, where we can use different devices, the availability to assign different meetings to solve questions 24/7 via web chat or messenger and so on. And in total, this is one of the main points and the main components of trust. It's a personal safety. And the trust is becoming very important. And other elements that are formulating the trust to the brand and different goods and services and suppliers, despite the personal safety, is first of all the focus to the communities, local communities, where the brand is operating, and that is used by our buyers, to the community and social conscience, also the people policy or HR policy, because now it's becoming a public issue when many companies ask the question how to deal with the reduced working days and so on. And what are the values that are defined by the brands?
Эффективности, да, там, если мы говорим стратегически, то стратегические приоритеты сегодня для тех, кто хочет быть успешным.
If you're talking about strategic priorities and it's for those that want to be successful, it's everyone is talking about this now, that we need to increase the platform, disregard where we are. And also even consulting as a service, there's terminology like that. We cannot continue this business as usual despite of the pandemic, despite of the quarantine, without being distracted by the strategic investments. Also from the point of view of increasing performance, today, at least in the developed market, there is a big attention being given to the automation and robotization of the process, introduction of artificial intelligence, and we can see very impressive figures for the artificial intelligence. So we're talking about 7 million per year, 7 billion per year in 1 or 2 years, and then the economy is a little higher. So here we can see that the AI is mostly in words rather than in reality, but for the RPA, we can see that the companies are moving and the figures are somewhat around. In general, for all of the companies, the range is wider, around 15% and higher, but in general, it's we can achieve it, the economy due to the robots, which is amounted to 25 to 50%. This is all. This is an entire overview of today's buyers and how to react to this and how people from e-commerce react to this. Kostya, thank you. I have a quick question before I give a word to a next speaker. Did you start to use e-commerce more in past 6 months? In past 6 months, I think I can't say that I started to use it more in past 6 months, but in past year and a half, I started to use e-commerce more. And if you look at the items that I say For example, on moving to e-commerce, it's a question of convenience, and also second, it's a price. And oftentimes I could not pay, uh, in the supermarket as for things that I needed. And sometimes, in general, the accessibility, of course, and the choice. Thank you, Kostya. And we have a question. What sources did you use in Kazakhstan to prepare a presentation? I will ask it now, not in the end of our session, for you to respond to it right away. Well, here it's this without relation to any countries. It's just does the social surveillance. Sometimes we involve agencies which study regional specificity. Thank you. Thank you, Konstantin. Again, thank you for your presentation. And I now would like to give word to Jean Yerke, the legal regulation of the e-trade in Republic of Kazakhstan. Jean Yerke. Good afternoon, colleagues. I'm glad to greet you all. I would like to say thank you for organizers to having the chance to discuss the relevant issues of e-commerce, because after quite a long time of pandemics, this field became the driver of economy in many countries. I would like to start my presentation with a review of main legal acts which are currently regulate the electronic trade in Kazakhstan. It's of course international treaties. It's the contract of Eurasian Economic Union and the Constitution of Republic of Kazakhstan, which also guarantees free activity of enterprise activity, enterprise code, which regulates entrepreneurial code, which regulates the main business items, civil code of Republic of Kazakhstan, which regulates the deals, tax code, which also contains information about regulation of electronic trade, the code about custom regulations in Republic of Kazakhstan, which is again regulates the shipments and delivery of the goods. It's the law on regulation of the trade activity as well, and several laws which are related to the digital technologies, and the most important, the law about protection of the consumers' rights. And also I would like to state that the changes in the national legislation are being done as part of joining the World Trade Organization. And in the country, we can see that the government provided the acceptance of the roadmap, which were targeted towards the development of the electronic trade, started 2018. In general, as in terms of the improving the legislation in 2019-2020, several laws were adopted, which significantly impacted the electronic trade, among which I would like to state the law about making changes and amendments on business area development and regulation of the trade activity from 2nd April 2019. And in this law, the definition of electronic trade and electronic commerce were separated, and the introduction of electronic platform was done. On this slide, I put a brief description of the terminology, and also it's worth saying that the term electronic trade was done on 27 October 2019, and since then it was subject to certain amendments. Also, the infrastructure was of electronic platforms and electronic trade was done. First of all, it's of course requirements to the participants of electronic trade. Also, the non-cash payments were defined with the usage of electronic payment systems. Also, coordination measures to delivery of goods, because again, the service via electronic commerce was done via the law. Also, the payment procedures were defined also in terms of the return of the goods, which again is very valuable for the clients, and the conclusion of the contracts of buying and selling and service provision contracts. It was decided that we will use information communication technology to exchange electronic documents, electronic messages. Also, I like to state that it was understanding they've introduced the concept of fulfillment center, which we didn't have before. And on the slide, I'm showing that it is an ecosystem of the e-trade, which basically included from the moment of gathering the law to, and all of this was provided by the payment services. Management of the returns was also provided for in these logistic centers, and accounting as well, warehouse storage as well. So all of it is done via IT services. And why I stated this, because using this novelty, our company introduced the measures which will lead towards understanding, towards formation of such fulfillment center. In 2019, we opened 3 new centers in Nur-Sultan, Almaty, and Aktobe. And this year we opened 4th center. So it's big logistical centers which are targeted towards provision of the business needs and of the consumers which move towards online, and it was strengthened since pandemics. Also, we plan, as it said on the slide, by 2027 to have this number of fulfillment center up to 20. Also, we did an analysis of the volumes of shipments which happened to go through fulfillment centers, and we see that there was a growth, significant growth. And for the next period, we forecast that there will be demand for these services. Also, from our side, as part of the roadmap on the Digital Kazakhstan program, we organized the centers in Nur-Sultan, Almaty, and Karaganda. We trained in 2019 1,500 people of SMEs. In 2019, we trained around 2,500 people. In 2020, given the pandemics, we trained only 705 people on how to deal with electronic commerce. The infrastructure looks like this. All IT solutions they provided from the moment of the ordering of the good to the return and calculations. And of course, it was a good reason to implement such project, because our company provides all financial services. We have our own payment cards, and as part of e-commerce, we have the payment card with AliExpress and e-commerce card, the multi-currency e-commerce card. And also I want to state that changes in law were done to the tax code as well, which introduced the principle of working on special economic zones. And that is when we could increase the custom transit and use the existing potential, because big volumes of shipments from China were coming through Kazakhstan to European Union and to abroad. Also, I want to state that there was a change in the consumer protection law, This was significant changes because many issues were not resolved, which happened in the electronic trade. First, the principle was introduced that the protection on e-commerce should not be less than the level that is provided on the electronic trade. Sellers are now having certain obligations, specifically on provision of information to the clients on the payment procedures. Also, we gave the right to the consumer to comment what they buy, and also for them to make decisions. And also the sellers are now obligated to provide information on cost and on shipments before they conclude a contract with the client. Electronic trade platform which will function, they will not be given any specific requirements. So the access was given only after they had passed certain procedures, safety procedures. Also, it was, as often happens, since it was given the not valuable, not verified information, the requirement was that they should give the protected channel of communication. And starting January 2021, it's creation of one unified information system, because the court practice is not as big. It's just been formulated, and it's expected that it will be one unified database on this category. Also, I would like to state that from the government, we have a big support. It's all implemented in certain companies, and here I gave an examples which are already being implemented in reality, and all of it is happened for government by 2025 to lead the electronic trade by 25% of total trade. In terms of the custom regulation, and which is being applicable in as part of Eurasian Economic Union, I want to state the major items because other experts will have more detailed information. It's a unified custom tariff by European Union. They can be having the tax benefits, tax quotas, and measures for non-tariff regulations. With that, I would like to say that specifically to reshipment of the items to the international shipments, Eurasian Economic Committee from December 20, 2017 stated that if in 2018 non-fee shipment was quite high, around 1,000 euro, and there was a parameter 31 kilogram by weight, but it was limited no more than once per month. In 2019, the indicator lowered by 500 euro and not less than once a month. This year, it's been reduced to 200 euro from our country's participants of the Eurasian Economic Union, and excluded the periodicity of receiving of such goods. And it's very attractive for internet, for the internet shops. That's what is being used by B2C quite successfully. With that, I would like to say that there is a certain specificities with movement of goods via the border, via international shipments, via post. And we collaborate with many online shops, and this is a competitive advantage. However, the status is being defined by the government, and such parameters of provision of services, they are assigned to a certain operator of the post, which is our company. As part of the specificities, I had wrote some where we don't need the specific information from the customs, the risk assessment system. First of all, it's the queue, first come, first serve. Second, the custom iterations are not being delivered to a certain international shipments and accepting only the documents which are provided by the World Postal Union, which Kazakhstan is a part of. Also, I would like to state that when custom procedures, they provide for custom clearance, export, import. As part of the passenger custom declaration, it's the documents which are provided by the World Postal Union. Also, there is certain norms and custom legislation when the item is to be returned. It often happens in online buying. The goods that cross the border, they are being returned without any custom declaration. Also, the specificity is that there is no requirements on paying the custom fee because, as I already stated, there is certain services. As if you look in general in we can see that certain trends, for example, on this slide, there is a data from 2019, 2019, and the 6 months of 2020, where we see that there is a certain growth in volume, in million of units. With that, the number of new internet shops had grown and is now more than 2,000. Also, we can see that there is a growth of export of Kazakh goods, to which Kazakhstan give a good attention and a good measure of support. Of course, pandemic had led towards the growth of online trade and this B2C sector. And the volume of e-trade, it's already 435 billion, which is 9.4%. If before state planned to go to this level only by 2023, then now this indicator is grown by 2015.
Оборот также увеличился без наличных операций.
The turnover of cashless operations also increased. That amounts about 73 trillion tenge. If we compare it with the international market, electronic commerce, we can see that the level of Kazakhstan, we can see the same tendencies that we have in the international trade. Here on this slide, I showed some comparison examples, and you can see the same dynamics, the improvement based on different focus that will increase further. And here on this slide, I've shown that if before the most part about 80% of the world market of electronic commerce amounts at the B2B sector, are comprised of B2B sector, now the sector B2C is increasing. During last 9 months, and probably this trend will be kept and even increased. In total, the whole e-commerce market is increasing, and to fully control and to focus some indicative indicators is quite complicated. But if we take the top 10 countries, just preliminary, we can see the turnovers that are achieved by the market. Janirkia, thank you very much. It's very interesting presentation, but there is a question. I will suggest to ask this question in the end. and to respond in the end of our panel session. So that is why thank you very much. I would like to invite Dana Gul with the taxation aspects of electronic commerce in the Republic of Kazakhstan.
Жанерке, спасибо большое.
Janirke, thank you very much. Dana Gul, please, the floor is yours. Good morning, dear participants of the conference. Vyacheslav, thank you very much for the opportunity to participate in this conference and to share with you with the information. Today, I will share some taxation aspects of electronic commerce in the Republic of Kazakhstan. We will speak about the electronic commerce, what are the tax benefits, what are the practical issues in this field, and also I will speak about the internet platforms activities, about their taxation benefits and their aspects, and I will suggest some changes to our legislation regarding electronic commerce. So let's start. Electronic trade of goods. From 2018, in our tax code, electronic quotas appeared. In order to apply this benefits, we introduced the definition of electronic trade of goods. It's an entrepreneurial activity on selling to physical bodies via internet or internet platform with following of different conditions. First of all, the deal should be in electronic form. By internet, the payment should be cashless, without cash, and the third, the company that sells goods should have own courier service or an agreement in order to provide such services for delivering goods or via post or delivery services. So this is the definition in tax code for electronic commerce in Kazakhstan. And first of all, I would like to note the main aspects on electronic goods and services. First of all, it's provided by legal bodies or individual entrepreneurs. Selling of goods is fulfilled for physical bodies, so the buyers can be only physical bodies, natural persons. And the sales is connected only with sale of goods, and it should be provided by internet shops or internet platform. Before we start to speak, what are the benefits or privileges are used by sailors, we need to differentiate internet shops and internet platforms. Some people confuse and they think that they interchangeable definitions. It's not true. What is internet shop? Internet shop, if you look at this chart, is the resource that is developed by the seller or provider that have own internet resources and that places different goods on this internet resource. This is internet shop. What is internet platform? If you look on the bottom, internet platform is the intermediary between the seller and the buyer, and internet platform is developing own internet resource where it sell different places and via this internet platforms, different goods can be procured by the buyers. And just an example, I would like to show some examples of internet shops and internet platforms. For example, Technodom company has own goods, it sells it, including offline, but it also has own internet shop where it sells own goods. Internet platform, for example, FlipKZ, that provides a space in own resource where different sellers can sell their goods on this platform. So what are the preferences for the companies that deal with electronic trade? First of all, I would like to stress out that this privileges can be refer to only online platforms. If, for example, the income following all the above-mentioned conditions are 90% and more from the general income. So these tax buyers, if they are LLPs, they are not subject to the corporate income tax, and individual entrepreneurs are not subject to the individual income tax. So it's the exemption from the corporate tax. But as I've already mentioned, there are different conditions in order to subject to electronic trade. And the main difficulty to make it real, in our point of view, is the condition that the payment should be made cashless. It's one of the most difficult conditions. At the same time, the use of tax privileges can be complicated, and one of the decisions, if a company is very serious about electronic commerce, it can register a separate legal body that will focus on electronic commerce of goods. And then above mentioned requirements that minimum 90% of the whole income should comprise of electronic goods and trades be followed. This is just brief information about the electronic sales of goods. I would like to stop on internet platforms. As I have already mentioned, internet platform is an intermediary between a seller and a buyer that for a specific payment can provide space on own resource in order to sell electronic goods. And the activity of internet platforms can be in the list of specific preferences, including tax ones, and such preferences when the company should be registered in the International Technical Park Astana Hub, located in Sultan, and then the activity of an internet platform should be in the list of activities of information technologies. And the decree of the Ministry of Digital Development, Defense and Aerospace Industry of the Republic of Kazakhstan, dated April 11, 2019, based on Article 14 of this decree, the activity of internet platform can be classified as follows: the activity on delivering services in order to, just a second, please, on, just a second, please. The provision by the internet program technical opportunities to make contacts and making deals between sellers and buyers, to provide the trade space that is functioning in the internet online with the use of developed by participant of International Technological Park Astana Hub specific software. So it means if a company, an internet platform, is subject to this definition, and the software that is used by it should be also developed by a participant of Astana Hub. It should be registered in this technological park. Accordingly, it can use the preferences that are provided for the participants of Astana Hub. In particular, the exemption from approximately all the taxes for tax payers, for example, individual and corporate income tax, including those from non-residents, VAT, the social tax for non-residents. So approximately all the taxes. And despite these taxes, I would like to say that such companies have also some preferences in the field of attraction of foreign labor force. For example, they do not need the permission to attract a foreign labor force or the limits on the number of such employees. And if, for example, they make a working visa, so the duration can be up to 5 years instead of a standard 3 years. What are the practical issues of internet platforms today? First of all, I would like to note that from a legal point of view, the legal relations between the buyer, seller, the internet platform, and trade platform currently, unfortunately, are not regulated to a specific extent. And in this regard, the internet platforms are very often faced with different problems, in particular in accounting or taxation. For example, let's take an income. There is an often question whether there should be an internet platform that should recognize the whole sales income, or it should recognize the income in the amount of own payment from the seller, or for example, as part of payment for delivery of this good, and thus the recognition of income of internet platforms. So they always ask the question how correctly to make the documents on all these transactions. And if we look at this example on the slide, very often they ask a question. We know that when we as a buyer receive goods electronically, we need to receive a fiscal check. A fiscal check should indicate the payment or the price of this good, but because it's provided via an internet platform, it's not the ownership of internet platform. There is a question whether they need to write off this fiscal check only for this good or of the expenditures, including the internet platform. That is why all these questions are quite complicated. And also internet platforms very often face with the questions not only regarding income, but expenditures. For example, there is a practice when independently they can provide the practice counts that are placed in specific platform for buyers. And in this regard, there is a question, is such a discount an income for physical body, and shall the internet platform keep or pay an individual corporate tax? And as for the expenditures also, and I would like to note that, of course, taxpayers who do not use the preferences can also use it because they, for example, not all of them follow the rules of Asana Hub, and expenditures can cover the expenditures for the promotion, SMM, and so on. And from a tax point of view, and from a corporate tax point of view, is it beneficial or not? You know that the main rule of the tax code when we estimate the tax basis of the corporate individual tax, there is a requirement that the expenditure should be used for receiving an income, and there is a risk when the tax body can say, because you promote goods that do not belong to you, these expenditures can be considered that are not subject to the deduction from the corporate income tax. And in my conclusion, I would like briefly to say about a very important change if it's adopted. Now it's at the level of the discussion at the Senate of the Parliament. This change will be put into force from 2022. It's a plan that some foreign companies that are not present or that are not registered here in Kazakhstan, they will be obliged to be registered in the Republic of Kazakhstan as a taxpayer in the Republic of Kazakhstan, and they will be pay VAT 12% rate to the budget of Kazakhstan. The registration will be not official or similar to Kazakh payers, tax payers registration, and the companies that fulfill electronic trade via the platforms of physical bodies in Kazakhstan And the exclusions will be those goods where the VAT is paid for import. In other words, if you as a buyer, for example, orders from abroad or you buy from internet shops or platforms some goods here in Kazakhstan, despite and the company that sold this good must be registered here in Kazakhstan and to pay VAT. And other companies that provide goods in electronic format in Kazakhstan. This is another part of social pay. The taxes, it means that if, for example, you download something from your mobile phone, and if the producer is a foreign company and you paid money for that, based on the income from you as a physical body in Kazakhstan, the company should be registered here in Kazakhstan and pay VAT. But I would like to note that its so-called Google Tax will work only regarding physical bodies and sales, and it's operating in Russia. We want to introduce it from 2022, but we took a decision to postpone it. Now it's 1st January 2022, which is not. That's it. Thank you very much, Danagul. Thank you very much for your very detailed speech on the tax aspects of electronic commerce. Before we proceed, I have a question. Do you agree that currently electronic turnover is delaying from the electronic commerce? I just want to say that tax bodies require from us as from taxpayers different documents on paper, but electronic commerce dictates other conditions at the same time. I absolutely agree with you. Absolutely agree with you. I would like to stress out that the company that works in electronic commerce are more progressive. They are transitioning to for example, let's take fiscal checks. They are transitioning to electronic format of work, but tax bodies theoretically, the tax code permits to use electronic documents, but the practice is not developed. But I hope that we will move in this direction faster.
При проверках таких налогоплательщиков и все-таки учитывать формат работы электронной торговли, вообще взаимодействия.
And also account for the work of electronic trade, using of fiscal machines, and make the tax legislation in accordance. Thank you, Danagul. And I would like to invite 1 minute. I would like to invite our next participant, Ksenia, with the topic of court and alternative measures of protection in electronic commerce. Maybe we will have some questions. Moderator suggested while Ksenia is getting connected, I will read the question to those that presented. Good day. As of today, there are certain losses and no tracking number and loss of buyers' money in case if they buy something from AliExpress, since buying from various sellers in a certain time period there is not always a chance to constantly go to the app to check the date of a delivery completion and open dispute for return of the money. That's probably the question to me about AliExpress. I will comment. We don't have a direct integration with AliExpress, and the process of international shipment happens in the following way. It's the operator in China submits via their hubs and international shipment points to us. And then when they enter our system, we give them a tracking number, and then on the website, in a Telegram bot, in a mobile app, you can track the goods. However, about losses from the AliExpress part, it's can only be resolved by dispute with them. And recently, we again, due to pandemics, by the way, there were many complaints of such ways. So we decided to restart the text messages tracking on international shipments. And now we have, the shipments which actually interact the custom borders. Thank you, Jean-Nerke. Probably you partially responded to the question that I think was addressed to you. There are certain facts when the employees of the Kaspost refused. So to have money from AliExpress and the deadlines sometimes can be like 15 days for AliExpress to wait for the response. I think this should be again provided via Kaspost website, and also the question on how to interact with the world, with the world trade platform. Do you have anything to add on that? Yes, I already responded to that. In terms of the interaction with the World Trade Platform on AliExpress specifically, we had marketing activities, and with regards to integration of the systems directly, it's impossible because the systems, information systems are different, and from there is a certain like a point for the software to which we have to connect all countries which are part of the W Trade organization, and via that we have the joints on the tracking number. And this process will be constantly worked on because we have this program, and this program is acting for 4 years. So maybe China Post sometimes can be integrated, and then we will have one tracking number. So after AliExpress, we will then have different tracking number. So you understand it's a different, around 200 countries in the world, and everyone has their own different tracking numbers. So as of now, AliExpress can only be tracked on their platform. Thank you, Jean-Nerke. I understand that for Kosti and for his colleagues, they have a lot of work to do on this interaction. Next question, internet shop is equivalent to the sales of the physical entities via website. Is internet shop similarly sells as a sales via company website? Who would like to answer? Vyacheslav, this is Danagula, would like to answer. It does look like that, but to give a precise answer, we need to understand where this phrase was taken from. Sales via company's website. I understand, I agree. I think we need to make sure that there is no confusion between sales via company that has an internet shop and that has certain benefits and executes certain obligations. Ksenia, thank you. I would like to give you a word. Hi, colleagues. It's morning, so I would like to tell you good morning. I'm in Ukraine. I understand the responsibility of the speaker, which was presented before the coffee break, so I will not overload you with information. My task is to tell you about the work. I'm the managing partner of SPH office in the Ukraine. So as was stated by my colleagues, I listened to all of the reports, all of the speakers. Indeed, pandemic had made big corrections to how we used to live in our daily life. And suddenly it impacted how people react and how state interacted into this. And again, I would like to say that I listened about how it's done in Kazakhstan, and if I understand, the government of both countries actively made steps on softening the e-commerce during quarantine, making it more accessible and more acceptable rules of the game. As for Ukraine, we had changes in several ways. First of all, during quarantine, we were allowed to have distance sales of medication. It was prohibited in general because there were no limitation on what medication, but you just could not order medication online. Now this issue is resolved. Moreover, a majority of pharmaceutical networks are now providing such services for free. But that goes only to non-prescription medication and medication which can be stored. So something that does not require some special storage. Also, quarantine influenced the provision of this distance services in the field of education. The schools were closed, universities were closed, and the kindergarten, of course. So all of it impacted that the consumers of such services became much more, and naturally the number of fraud increased in this market because those that wanted to gain money and not provide the service. And here we have also a separate regulation in case of such services are being provided. It's a two big blocks. First of all, it's education, which goes to the internet, educational services, and they have the same requirements that they had offline. So they have to have a certain program, a certification, they have to have a permission, and only then they can provide the education product. But there is also big education services which do not need that. We're talking about various courses, information, trainings. So all of those educational services, nevertheless, they happen as some additional
сложнее, поскольку нужно искать то лицо, которое
consultation. And if you need to actually see what is not okay with that services. So our Ministry of Education started to give their own comments which were targeted towards the parents because they are the ones who are responsible, and also for them to see so they can see what services they had. And so all of it is plus certain requirements to the educational institutions. Also, another thing which happened in Ukraine during pandemics is the number of fraud marketplaces, enterprises which started to sell goods which somehow related to coronavirus. So it's supposed to test masks and other medical protective measures. And for that, unfortunately, it was very difficult to influence because there are certain laws in Ukraine that regulate the electronic trade. I'm not going to talk more about laws. I will talk more about practice. There is a legislation field. However, to track those shops, it's quite difficult. So it leads to what? It's very obvious that there is a violation, but it's difficult to impact it. So there are several ways to protect your rights. First is similar to consumer protection rights. It's a state service for the food protection, but they not do just food products, but that's how they named. So it's similar to the body which protects consumer rights, and I would say that this is mostly most effective body in this whole chain. Why? Because they have so many requirements as to why they need to start why they need to start an inspection. They have very low involvement, and they don't want to be involved in trade because it's very difficult to find the seller and then have him have certain obligations. If you're talking about some trades which is done by non-residents or the usage of foreign platforms, then we are no longer in Ukraine competency, and that means this body has no right. During pandemic, we also faced certain websites, one-day websites, that's what their names. It's mostly in Instagram, and not only. Those websites are created for a certain period of time. So it's a certain space. They take the prepayment or full payment, and it's usually done by cash or by the card, and then you cannot find this person because that person might not even exist. And this can be someone who does not even know that their data is being used. So I'm talking about banking data, and unfortunately, those things are present. Regarding the protection mechanisms, of course, there is a court. And my report is court and alternative methods. Why? Because I don't exactly believe in the court protection in Ukraine, because it has a big expenses on time. And due to coronavirus, many courts were closed, or the hearings were done with a significant difference in time. So, for example, it's normal in Ukraine when the hearings have been postponed for months during quarantine. And we will face that many courts will postpone for 6 months. And it's impossible to protect your rights because it's, again, postpones the dispute significantly. And any type of dispute, then it has associated time expenses, which you need to spend your time to actually get understanding of the situation, go to the court, send a claim to seller, and make any other activities. Second, to find the attorney, and then you have the expenses of both time and money, because all attorneys, you have to pay them. And now if we're talking about protection of rights from such fraud in e-commerce, we are talking about cases when you suffered with a big sum. Mostly fraud happens that people ask you to pay certain sums which you will not be ready to invest further. That's the basis of the fraud. Third is criminal law, because it's, I will use criminal law because it's more understandable for all. So we have how we normally go to the police, and then we have other cyber attack units. So all of the crime which happens in the internet, it's a cyber police. However, the cyber police does not always work in a good way, because we need to understand maybe there is a certain incentive to see what is happening and see that there is a fraud, see if there's an open data in a certain marketplace or for the certain seller, and try to have the seller be responsible by other articles on the criminal code and use prosecutor office if needed. And we have such opportunity. In Ukraine, criminal cases are being initiated 24 hours after the victim made a claim, and you can make a claim via mail or verbally or written way. Of course, I recommend any communication with the state bodies is with the written form. After that, within 24 hours, information has to be submitted to open and to have other type of activities on searching other type of evidence. If this has not happened, it's also being decided by a court. I would say that the criminal court is the quickest if we compare it to this court or consumer protection rights, because they can protect your right. What else did we face? It's a protection of intellectual property. So oftentimes they violate protection of intellectual property for domain, for example, because domain disputes in Ukraine, there is a quite good practice on that. But they have more problems with violation of the content. It's pictures, text. So it's a general. The problem is that the consumer is being confused because they don't know whether they should trust that certain brand or not, because the pictures are the same. And sometimes the consumer might confuse the brand. But this website is created very quickly. The owners are not in Ukraine oftentimes, so it's difficult to protect. And also in Ukraine, we don't have any relation to the phone numbers. So for example, a website can have contacts which will not be used and they exist only for a certain time. in Ukraine as of today, there is no specific list of permitted website which had certain procedure on registration, on permission. So people are very difficult to orient and whether this certain seller is okay or not. And such oftentimes there's Ukraine word that's not very significant problem as of now, because those are the issues that consumers can face. And again, it's inability to find a seller, inability to protect your own right, difficult procedure, and violation of intellectual property. And we are talking about this in the context of B2C. Intellectual property can also be in the context of B2B. And there are several problems with e-commerce, with the contragents which do not execute their obligations. And here we are talking about this involving arbitrage. But again, I advise, first of all, to consider first stage of work, especially if you're talking about relation between the countries. It's very important to know your country agent and spend some time to gather information about them from open and not all open sources, because if you are deciding to collaborate under your contract, there should be understanding that there is an intent and there are means by which you will provide it. And also, for the cooperation between the countries, there is a certain contract which is relevant. And sometimes what we face is that initially you can track the fraud when there is two versions on two different languages, and they are not identical. So there are different requirements which then diminish the contract itself. When in one language you have reference to one country, in another you have another one. So it's very difficult to make sense of it. Please translate and see it.
Это можно списать на халатность исполнителя, но чаще
So,
всего это говорит о...
for example, it can be the fault of the executors, but sometimes it's a sign of those people who do not want to fulfill their obligations in the future. And of course, it depends on the property of your counter agent, especially in criminal proceedings. It's very important to understand how to redeem the damage. And please take some time and to look at the register of judicial decisions you control, for example, in Ukraine, where you can see all the connections between the companies and where you can see whether this company is working, or probably, for example, it was set up during coronavirus, and many countries faced with fraudulence during pandemic time, and to see at the different judge decisions in order to see what's the reality of the company and who initiated proceedings against it, and so on. And nevertheless, I suggest when you enter into a transaction to both B2C and B2B segments to take some time and to make an analysis and to ask questions, is there enough information in the case of conflict, and only to then to take a decision on cooperation. I would be happier to respond to the questions about Ukraine and what we are doing here. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ksenia, for your very detailed information presentation. I think that the participants will have further questions, and all the participants have the opportunity to ask the questions in the Q&A chat. There are some questions. I suggest to have a break and then to proceed with the next session. And I will ask all the presenters to respond to the questions in written form, in written form, in order to respond fully and totally to the questions, probably we need additional information from those who asked the question. I read the questions and understood probably there is a need in clarification. That is why let's make a Q&A session in written form. I would like to give the floor to the next participants of the conference, the moderator of the next session, or are we having a coffee break?